Welcome to CTV News Trendline with Michael Stittle and Nik Nanos.
Nick, it's our last show of the year before we break for the winter, so it's a perfect time to see where the major federal parties stand and look at seat projections. But first, I want to play a clip for you from Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. He's really been hammering the Liberals all year long on cost of living issues, and now he's sort of setting up the fall fiscal update as a big showdown. Listen to this.
The reality is that Chrystia Freeland and Justin Trudeau have lost control of the finances. Justin Trudeau is a weak prime minister. He's lost control of the borders, lost control of immigration, lost control of spending, lost control of the debt, lost control of inflation, lost control of housing costs, lost control of crime, lost control of drugs. He's lost control of his own cabinet, with his foreign minister launching her leadership campaign on the front page of the New York Times with a big, beautiful photo shoot that she would have gone into a studio to have done, and a screaming headline describing her as a potential successor. He has totally lost control, and now he doesn't want Canadians to see the disastrous state of our books. Remember, he promised, she promised the deficit would not exceed $40 billion. And now they won't tell us what the deficit is.
Well, there you go. That's sort of been the subject of the year, Nick.
Yeah, maybe we should just ask Pierre Poilievre to share with Canadians what he really thinks about Justin Trudeau. Ay. So pretty scathing, but you know what? He's the leader of the official opposition. It's his job to be scathing. Whether you like or don't like the guy, he's very good at what he does. And what he's been doing over the last year, he's been building up a narrative of the Liberals being on the ropes, of things going in the wrong direction. And the second part of this is, from his perspective, he asserts that the Liberals are not in control, or Justin Trudeau is not in control, and that I think the second part of that, which is probably what he's going to say during the election, is that you can create some control or stability under the Conservatives. But this line of attack has been working. It's put the Conservatives in the driver's seat for more than a year. The latest Nanos ballot tracking has the Conservatives at 42% nationally, the Liberals way back at 23, NDP at 21. So Liberals and New Democrats within the margin of error. And you know what, Michael? The Liberals introduced their economic stuff, thinking that maybe it would change the numbers. Well, why don't we just say dead cat bounce? No offense to dead cats or to cats in general. We all like kitty cats. However, the reality is that the Liberals have tried everything. This is the latest thing that they've tried, and it's obviously not working. And Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives are just hammering away over and over again. They probably just can't wait for an election.
Nick, popular support is one thing, but how does your ballot tracking translate into seat projections?
Well, the thing is when we convert the Nanos polling into seat projections across the country, it's good news for the Conservatives. They're clearly in majority territory. The Liberals are back on their heels. The Bloc are also a party to watch in Quebec. But, right now we're looking at a majority Conservative government.
Why don't we go coast to coast, if that's all right with you, and start in the east? How are things looking in Atlantic Canada?
Well, check out the map. On the left-hand side is the outcome of the 2021 election with the new borders modeled, right? Not on the old borders, the new borders. Then on the right, you can see where we project right now with at least in the last week. Check out Newfoundland and Labrador, looking pretty blue. There's one little speck, I think it's Cape Spear, that we think that the Liberals will be able to hold on to. Avalon is too close to call. That's that gray spot. Same thing, you look at Cape Breton, swinging from Liberal to Conservatives, even on the island of PEI. Malpac probably a pickup for the Conservatives, but the Conservatives challenging in the other two ridings in PEI, and not a lot of red in New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Dominic LeBlanc, and and Beausejour and Acadie Bathurst in the northern part of the riding. But you can see the Conservatives basically in Atlantic Canada poised to pick up seats, a lot of seats in Atlantic Canada right now if there were an election, with the Liberals really back on their heels compared to where they were in 2021.
What are you noticing in Quebec so far?
Well, the interesting thing in Quebec, same kind of thing. You can see the last election with the new boundaries on the left. Now the seat projections. Look, if you look on the far right in Quebec, the Greater Quebec City area has always been good for the Conservatives, but it looks like they're starting to branch out a little more. And you can see the ridings like St. Maurice that are too close to call, Montmorency, Charlevoix too close to call. And basically the Conservatives picking up some ridings, and also the bloc doing well. But the more ridings in play in the riding of Quebec, with basically not great news for the federal Liberal Party.
Nick, in the GTA, traditionally there's been a lot of liberal strongholds in Toronto. The suburbs, different story. What are you noticing? What are you noticing there?
Well, the thing is basically it's a setback for the Liberals. It doesn't matter where you cut it. You can see, Michael, Brampton, Mississauga is key battleground, with the Conservatives actually um, mounting a major challenge to the Liberals in those ridings. But you can see the Liberals um, used to hold on to Pickering, Brookline. Now it's too close to call.
Hmm.
The Mississaugas are kind of in play. You can see Guelph, which was currently Liberal, and those ridings kind of outside of Kitchener, which were Liberal, are now tilting towards the Conservatives. Even the Greens in their riding in that they have there is kind of now a key battleground. Another riding and is to watch is Kingston in the Islands. That's my old hometown, Kingston,
Hmm.
because I went to school at Queens. Used to be Flora McDonald's riding. Peter Milliken won that. Liberals have held on to that since 1988. Well, it's in play now. Too close to
Wow.
call between the Liberals and the Conservatives. So that's going to be very interesting, because it has a popular Mark Gerritsen, I think, is the member of Parliament for Kingston the Islands. His dad was a long time serving elected official in Kingston, but looks like Gerritsen's going to be in for a tight fight in Kingston and the Islands even. So some of these Liberal strongholds that have been in the Liberal column for a long period of time, basically now up for grabs.
Nick, how much of that is a strong NDP? Because in your ballot tracking, the NDP is, just a few points behind the Liberals.
Yeah. Part of it is the split, Michael. The other part of it is basically the Conservatives picking up from the Liberals.
Hmm.
So, basically Liberal support has bled to both the Conservatives and the New Democrats. So the Conservatives have a double whammy, because the NDP splits the vote, plus the Conservatives have an advantage. So it's a double advantage, or a double whammy statistically for the Conservatives, which helps convert a lot of those seats in Ontario into the blue column.
Any surprises in the prairies?
No, not really. You can see riding there that in the northern part of Saskatchewan was a Conservative riding, but with redistribution, if we take the results from the last election and the new boundaries, actually tilts towards the Liberals. Maybe the Liberals might be able to hold on to that, but not a lot of change in the prairies. The prairies, for all intents and purposes, a lock for the Conservatives.
Nick, I always find British Columbia pretty unpredictable. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, check out the coast. The interior of British Columbia is actually quite conservative, has always been conservative, very much more like Alberta than the lower mainland in BC. But check out the coast. You can see NDP at risk of losing seats in on the coastal side, northern coast, and on the coast of British Columbia, even on the island of Vancouver Island, where the NDP are basically in a fight now with the Conservatives. And when we zoom into Vancouver, it's wow, it's just brutally bad for the Liberals. In Vancouver, I think there's only one riding that we think that the Liberals are going to hold. I think that's Surrey Newton, that little red box, but you can see the Conservatives picking up in the southern part of the of Vancouver. NDP doing better in the northern part of the city, like in the Burnaby area and stuff like that. But the Conservatives picking up in British Columbia. Doesn't matter where you cut it, where it is. And the vote split that you were talking about between the NDP, the Liberals, and the Conservatives is in play, where the Conservatives, their numbers are up, and those vote splits, because the NDP are competitive in a number of places in British Columbia, actually help the Conservatives.
Wow, Nick, this seems to be the trend for the past year. Do you see any big changes before we hit October 20th next year, which is, the absolute last date before we can have a federal election?
Anything could happen, but the reality is that the election is for Pierre Poilievre to lose. Like, he basically has to not make a mistake and do nothing, and ride, I'll call it, a blue wave of change. And that's why Justin Trudeau and the Liberals have to desperately hope that somehow Pierre Poilievre or someone close to Pierre Poilievre makes a mistake. But I don't think Pierre Poilievre is going to make a mistake. That's not part of his MO. He's a known commodity. He's pretty disciplined. Whether someone around him makes a mistake is a different story, but be surprised if there is some type of revelation, but who knows?
Nick, Pierre Poilievre has really been, hitting the Liberals hard on cost of living issues, and obviously we've seen this translate into the ballot support. The Liberals tried to counter that with their tax holiday. You did a survey for the Globe and Mail on how Canadians feel that played out. What did you find?
Yeah, the survey that we did with the Globe, basically Canadians giving a big thumbs down to the GST, HST holiday and to the $250 check. For the $250 check, 6% of Canadians, that's 1 out of every 20, think that it's a very good idea to send $250 to working Canadians that make up to $150,000. Another 9% think it's a good idea. But you can see basically that 2 out of 3 Canadians think that the $250 check to working Canadians who make up to 150,000, big ones, is a poor or a very poor idea. And you know what? The GST holiday, not much more popular. About a third of Canadians think that it's a very good or good idea, but you can see about 51% or thereabouts, 1 out of every 2 think that it's a poor, very poor idea. So if the Liberals thought that this was going to move the numbers, I don't know. Like, I think there are a number of issues with this. First of all, Canadians are not stupid. This is a government that's on its legs, that's trying to hold on to power, and they see this as a way to try to win votes. So people are not stupid. That's a message to all politicians, not just the current government, but people are not stupid. And second of all, if you're making 150,000, or why don't we say 140,000 or $100,000, do you think $250 is going to change your mind on who you might vote in the next election? That's absolutely preposterous. And the thing is this HST GST holiday for 60 days, count it, 60 days till February the 15th, ironically the day after Valentine's Day. So congratulations, Canada. You'll have a holiday on GST on certain things until after Valentine's Day. And the day after Valentine's Day, not only will Valentine's Day be over, your GST holiday will be over. But, the thing is people are wondering, like, how's that going to work? Provinces have come out questioning how much they were consulted. The government is not only going to have to absorb the cost of the savings, but they're probably going to have to reimburse some provinces as part of their tax agreement with these provinces that have harmonized sales taxes. So it's a mess, Michael, a mess. The Liberals would have been better off to do nothing.
It really it really feels like Poilievre has really tapped into real sentiment here in Canada, where people are very worried about their own finances, but the economy on the whole. You track the issues that matter most to Canadians. Does that match up with what you're seeing?
Yeah, well, especially in the wake of Donald Trump being made or winning the election, President-elect Trump also announcing that he intends or wants to or might introduce a 25% tariff on Canadian goods, Mexican goods, and stuff like that. We ask Canadians in our tracking for Bloomberg every week whether they think the economy will be stronger, weaker, or the same in the next 6 months. Check out the numbers. The proportion of Canadians that think the economy will get weaker has risen 17 points in 4 weeks. Fewer Canadians also think that the economy will get stronger. And I think this speaks to the uncertainty right now. So, so Pierre Poilievre, think of it this way. There's uncertainty in the economy. And what is Pierre Poilievre talking about? We heard the clip, not in control and uncertainty, connected what he'd like to do, connect uncertainty to the Liberals. And, that's working for the Conservatives right now.
Former Bank of Canada Governor Stephen Pawles was quoted recently about how he actually thinks that Canada is in a recession currently. I want to read you this, Nick. He says, "I would say we're in a recession. I wouldn't even call it a technical one. A technical one is a superficial definition that you have 2 quarters of negative growth in a row, and we haven't had that. But the reason is because we've been swamped with new immigrants who buy the basics in life, and that boosts our consumption enough." So basically, that buying is masking an actual recession.
Yeah, actually, the immigration policy is masking a recession. And the other thing that's masking a recession is the tremendous increase in the size of the federal government. So, when the government adds to its payroll, that doesn't help with GDP productivity, I'll tell you that much, because they're not in the private sector or the nonprofit kind of generating things. They're in the public sector. But, the thing is that, our unemployment rate, which is now there's some pressure on unemployment in terms of it going up. If the government, I think whether the Liberals are in power, the Conservatives are in power, there's going to be some right sizing in government just because it's grown so much over the last 5 years. 5 years especially. So, in addition to the immigration, we've got jobs numbers that are going to get worse. And it speaks to the environment that we're in. So buckle up. I think maybe that's one of the big takeaways. We should be buckling up because it's not going to be great for 2025.
Nick, Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland, her fall economic update is coming up quite soon in just a few days. What are you expecting from that?
I think she's going to be on the defensive, defending the HST, GST tax holiday and defending her assertion that the $250 check to people making up to $150,000 is a good idea. Usually these economic statements are times for the government to get their message out, to talk about the wonderful job that they're doing, kind of a little bit of an infomercial, try to change the trend line. Not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And the Liberals have done this to themselves. It's not like the Conservatives forced them to have this idea of the $250 check or the HST tax holiday. The Liberals decided to do that themselves. The Liberal government, it's increasingly kind of like those Charles Dickens novels. They get their, the one character, they get their comeuppance. Mm-hmm. Well, holy moly, right? They do stuff like this. Should they really be surprised that the numbers don't move? Because every time they try to do something to move the numbers, it's like 2 steps forward, 3 steps back for the Liberals. And that's why they're in a hole where they're like, at 23% nationally, while the Conservatives are at 42% nationally.
Nick, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll look at what's ahead for Canada in 2025.
Super.
Nick, it's been a wild ride of provincial elections this year, the re-election of Donald Trump south of the border. I have no idea what's in store for 2025. What do you think?
Number of things. First of all, Donald Trump, it is a game changer, not just for Canada, but for NATO allies and the world, that he is back. He will be back as president. I guess, does it sound like one of those movies, like, he's back? Anyways. And, everyone will be dealing with the newer situation. I think everybody kind of forgot that he was tweeting every day when he was president the first time and how he was disruptive. But Disruption was his strategy and his style. So expect more disruption, expect him to be provocative in social media as part of his negotiation strategy. So, when I saw the tweet for 25%, I assume that's just the opening salvo from Donald Trump on the review of the U.S., Canada, Mexico free trade agreement.
Nick, on that note, the 25% tariff, he said he wants to do that unless Canada gets in control of our own borders with the US. I think he mentioned fentanyl coming over.
Yep.
You did a survey for CTV News about how Canadians feel about potential illegal immigration coming from Canada to the US, which I thought was really interesting. What did you find?
Well, we're a border nation. Like, let's face it, Michael, 90% of Canadians live within a 1 hour drive of the US border. And the volume of these irregular border crossings between Canada and the United States is not material compared to what's happening on the southern border of the United States. So we really have to say that and make that point. It's a very valid point to make. But, I think for a lot of Canadians, they are uncomfortable with any kind of irregular crossings, and they're concerned about people crossing the border irregularly. So, the thing is, whether you like Donald Trump or not, the border is an issue for Canadians. Immigration is an issue for Canadians. They would the ideal is that they want regular immigration or normal immigration or whatever you want to call it, orderly immigration. And that's what the Liberals have to deliver on. So, but the thing is, the border is a shared responsibility. The Americans can't just point the finger at Canadians and not expect to take some responsibility themselves. So perhaps this is an opportunity for the federal government to talk to the U.S. administration to say, what can we do together to have the border that both countries want?
Nick, we will have a federal election here sooner or later. October 20th is the last possible date for Canada. How is that going to play out while Donald Trump has been inaugurated as president?
Yeah, well, there will be an election guaranteed, like you said, in 2025. The question is, when will it happen? One of the key junctures will be the federal budget, because that will be a spending bill. It'll be a confidence motion, all that kind of stuff. Michael, can I just put a crazy idea on the table?
Always, Nick, always.
Yeah, I'm sure this will be quoted. This will be tweeted, and I'll be whatever, strung up. Pitchforks will show up at my office after saying this. This GST HST tax holiday thing was kind of weird from the beginning for me. Like, why 60 days? That's not a very long period of time. Like, 60 days is not long enough to turn the numbers around, except if you have this 60 days. So now the NDP have supported the HST holiday, which only lasts for 60 days. So the question is, February 15th or February 14th or February 16th or whatever, that day when the 60-day period ends, what's going to happen? Well, I think there's a scenario where the Liberals can go to the NDP and say, hey, we think this is a wonderful idea. We'd like to extend this. And they get the NDP to support them one more time. So maybe to give them some sort of lifeline. The other thing that I would not underestimate is the willingness or appetite of a government that is trying to hold on to power to prorogue Parliament. So I know we say, spring election. I don't know. I think that's probably the greatest likelihood, but I would not underestimate the Liberals just doing anything within the rules to try to hold on to power. So, Michael, maybe this HST holiday will be longer than 60 days, and then they'll get the NDP to do that, and maybe they'll agree to extend the $250. Because if you're the Liberals and you're like 19 points back, it's kind of like, well, let's spend the money. If we lose, it's Pierre Poilievre's problem. If we win, it'll be our problem, but at least we'll win. So who knows what's going on over there? But I think there's greater uncertainty, and now there's kind of a few more options for the Liberals to survive a little longer.
Oh, very interesting. So they don't really want to rip off that Band-Aid. They want to kind of slowly pull it off, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is it going to make any difference to the outcome?
Mm,
Probably not, perhaps. It gives more runway for them to try to find a weakness in Pierre Poilievre. But, think of it this way. If they're going to get crushed today or get crushed in February or get crushed in March, does it make any difference whether they get crushed in October? Right?
mm.
They might as well hope for a later date, knowing that the sooner that the election happens, the more likely they are to get crushed, assuming nothing changes, Michael.
Nick, that's interesting. Are you expecting any other big things in 2025?
Unemployment. I think we're going to have to watch unemployment in the weekly tracking. We saw the Canadian unemployment numbers move, but we also saw in our tracking now concern about jobs in the economy as the top national unprompted issue of concern is up. It's now pulling ahead of inflation. Jobs is at 18% unprompted. Inflation is now at 10. Immigration's at 9, stuff like that. But we're noticing people are now starting to worry about their jobs. I think this is because of the uncertainty in the economy. They're wondering about what a Trump administration might mean for the Canada-US relationship. And in 2025, the federal government will be starting to downsize, right? It won't be expanding, I don't think. It's probably likely to downsize a little bit, even under the Liberals. And then so we're going to have a double whammy of pressure and worry about the Canada-US-Mexico trade agreement and arrangement, and then unemployment on the increase, probably because of some of those government jobs, which we're not going to call them temporary, but were short-term that came on board because of the pandemic, being potentially dialed down.
Sounds like a rocky year ahead, but very interesting nonetheless.
Yeah. The good news is that maybe in the World Junior Men's Hockey Championship, maybe Canada can win. So why don't we just say from the get-go, we're rooting for Canada and our Canadian team to do well. And that would be a really great way to start the year. Probably, I don't know whether it'll help any politician, but it'll be a good way to start the year, at least if the Canadian men's team, junior men's team can do well in the tournament in Ottawa.
Absolutely. I love it. We're ending the year on a positive note, on an optimistic note. Thanks, Nick.
Okay.
Thank you for the past year. Thank you to all of our listeners and viewers, and I will see you in January.